Thank you for joining me today. My name is Melissa Lockaby. I'm going to share my screen. Let me make sure I can get this up and running. If you can indicate in the chat that you can see my screen, it's the opening between the lines, a deep dive into book reviewing. Thank you to ACRL for hosting me today. Again, my name is Melissa Lockaby, and I am the collection management librarian with the University of North Georgia. I have also been C&RL's book review editor for the past 2 years, I believe. I'm going into my third year. Um, I have been in libraries for the past 15 years, with about the first five or, well, maybe seven of them in the public library, but I've been with the University of North Georgia for 9 years. It's a perfect position for me because I love shopping and books. So the collection management librarian opportunity gives me the chance to buy books for a whole lot of people. So welcome today, and thank you for joining us. And again, thank you to ACRL. A couple of just quick housekeeping things. You have been muted, but if you do have questions, please feel free to drop any of your questions or comments in the chat box. Maddie Johnson, who is also with C&RL as the social media editor, will be monitoring the chat box and will be asking the questions to me, or sending me the questions as you ask them. Um, Hopefully we can make this also a conversation today, so it's just not me talking to a screen at this point. I always find it hard because I can't judge, I can't see faces, so I much prefer seeing people in live. So please share your comments, share questions, because I want to make this a learning opportunity for everybody. So, this is what we will be covering today. I'm going to be asking a couple of questions if there are any book reviewers out there right now. I also want to know what your ideas are for what makes a good book review. And then I'm going to cover just what I find as the elements of a good book review, along with some additional tips for writing them. And then I'm going to offer a few examples of some good book reviews. And then finally, just a wrap up of today's session. Plus, hopefully, I will give you time to ask questions at the end if we don't cover them during the session. So again, please share in the chat any questions that you might have. Okay, so are there any book reviewers in the crowds? So if you will just drop in the chat, um, just easy questions. Who reads book reviews? Have you ever used them in the past, either for your own personal use when you're picking out books for you, whether fiction or nonfiction, trying to find the next best read? Is there anybody here who writes book reviews currently, either for CNRL or for other journals online, even for your own blogs or for your Facebook posts or for Instagram? Is there anybody out there who also writes book reviews? And finally, do you use book reviews to make buying decisions for professional development or for your library collection? Is Do you read other book reviews? Do you read them in journals? Do you read them in CNRL? For me, I used to be book review editor for the Southeastern Librarian. So are there local journals? Do you read them in I believe the New York Times or even on Amazon? So do you use book reviews to make book buying decisions for professional development or for your own library's collection? And the final question is, what makes a good book review? Are there certain elements? Are there certain things that you look for? And Maddie, if you could kind of maybe share, if anybody's dropping in comments for this, what makes a good book review? What do you look for in a book review? And I can't tell if anybody is chiming in.
We have lots of comments in the chat. I think people might not have written answers to this question yet,
Okay,
but there are too many comments, I think, for me to read all of them. But there's a lot of stuff that you might want to come back
back
to
to.
later, maybe
Perfect.
about stuff that people are adding in terms of how they use book reviews and their own plans for writing book reviews.
Which is perfect.
So
Which is,
a couple,
no, go
uh,
ahead.
just a couple comments now are coming in about what is a good book review. So, opinion on style, flow, recommendations, concise ratings, usefulness of title. It's useful when the book review is clear about what kinds of libraries, populations the book would be helpful for. Um, Book reviews that give a good overview of the book's content, interesting aspects of the content, or the audience.
And sometimes you don't know what a good book review is until you read it. So let's go ahead and start with the elements of a good book review. And for me, book reviews, that means it can be a couple of paragraphs because I know I've written for just brief book summaries or reviews for Library Journal. And sometimes those are just very, very short snippet paragraphs. Now, I know Library Journal also offers more extensive reviews, but sometimes book reviews are just a brief you know, couple of sentences of what it's about and do you like it and what kind of library it belongs in. Or it can be as long as a couple of pages. So keep that in mind as we talk about book reviews and the elements today. So a book review, there's an introduction to it. And sometimes what I have seen in book reviews is that people introduce the book, give the title, the author, and then they dive right into a summary of the book. So for me, a really solid book review is yes, you introduce the book. Absolutely. You give the title, you give the author, and sometimes you even place the author's credentials or background, maybe just a sentence or two, um, to to prove or to show their credentials, so readers know, hey, this person who's writing this particular book knows what they're talking about. But a book review also provides an opening statement. It provides context to the book that's being reviewed. Why maybe it includes why the book is important or why the topic is important. It also includes the thesis, whether it's your thesis of kind of what you're covering in the book review or what your purpose of the book review is. But it's also providing the primary purpose of the author of why they're writing the book. Or maybe it's an edited book with articles or different chapters written by a variety of people. It's going to include a thesis or the main purpose of the book. And what I have found sometimes is that this thesis and this opening statement is missing in some of the book reviews that I've read. But these two are very important things to include because it actually anchors your book review. It's just like writing a research paper. You have your introduction to your research paper. Now, it may only be in this case 1 sentence, maybe 2 sentences at the most for a thesis, maybe an extra sentence for the opening statement. Again, it depends on how long the book review is, how much real estate you have, whether you are writing a 2,000 word book review or whether you are writing a 3 page book review. So you'll adjust the length of your opening statement or your thesis. But I find that sometimes these elements are missing and people dive into the actual review of the book immediately. And I like to see the opening statements and the thesis because it grounds the book review for me. It says, okay, this is why it's important. This is in part the relevancy. Now, how you order these particular elements may not be opening statement, introduce book, and thesis. You may mix it up in your book review. So by no means are these elements in any particular order. It depends on your writing, on where you place them, or how it makes sense to you when you're writing the book review. So your introduction really should include your opening statement, your thesis, and then your introduction to the book, which includes the title, the author, and sometimes the author or the editor's credentials. And then if you have any other comments about what else might be included in the introduction, please drop them in the chat. We will be sharing this presentation, by the way, with a link and then also with my presentation, my PowerPoint as well at the end or within a couple of days of this presentation too. So the second part of a book review is actually the meat and potatoes, if you will, of the book review. It is the assessment. It's your analysis of the book review. And a book review is an opinion. So remember that it is your opinion, but please remember to be kind to the authors or to the book. You don't want to completely diss a book or to completely criticize a book. If you don't like it, or if the content doesn't cover what's expected, what it proposes, or if the author doesn't stay on topic, you can say this, but please do this in a professional manner. What I like to remind people when they are writing a book review is to review a book to provide an assessment or a critical analysis as you would want your book to be treated as well. So please keep that in mind. So your analysis, it's a brief summary of the book. So provide a brief summary, the primary points of the book. You can use the unifying theme that ties the chapters or the articles together. It is not a an itemized, I guess, an itemized statement of chapter by chapter of what the book covers. Chapter 1 covers this, chapter 2 covers this, chapter 3 covers this content. It is not a chapter by chapter summary of the book. It is your assessment. It's just a brief summary of the highlights of what people can take away from the book. Because remember, this is a book review. People are trying to get an idea. Is this book going to cover what I need? Is this book going to fit in my collection? Does it belong in a public library? Does it belong in a school curriculum? But you're not providing a detailed summary or a play-by-play of each chapter that's being covered by the author. Okay? The other thing that you seek to answer in your analysis or your assessment of the book is whether the author was successful with what they proposed in their thesis. Did they cover what they said that they were going to cover? If the author was covering, let's see, the integration of AI into libraries, Were they successful in addressing that topic? Did the author stay on topic as well? Was their quality of writing solid? Was their tone appropriate? And in thinking about the author's tone, go back and think also about, you know, thinking ahead on where it belongs, whether it belongs in a public library, whether it belongs in the school curriculum. Does the author's tone or does the book fit into those particular categories as well? And think about whether it should be perhaps for an undergraduate curriculum or a graduate curriculum. Or does this fit managers? Does this fit your online staff, the people behind the desk? So think about these questions when you are evaluating whether the author was successful or whether the author stayed on topic or not. And then also you're going to provide an opinion or a critical analysis on the content of the book. Did the authors or editors support the thesis? Are the articles and chapters organized in a logical order? Are the arguments presented in an in a logical order? Does it make sense? Does chapter one follow, or does chapter two spring off of chapter one and going forward? Are there any troublesome areas that you see? Are there arguments that might be weak? Are there things that perhaps the author didn't cover or that the editors did not cover? And along with your brief summaries and your content analysis, use supporting evidence from the book. You might even give specific examples here and weave those examples into your narrative. And in your summaries, sometimes when you're highlighting the primary points, you might not even do a point by point, here's this point, and here's the third point. You might even organize your analysis and say, okay, my primary, here's the initial argument that the authors or editors propose. And then you weave in your narrative of the supporting evidence and maybe your analysis on how well the author covered that particular item. You can use quotes from the book, but I do recommend using those quotes sparingly. Don't use quote after quote after quote. Use those key quotes to support your arguments or even the author's arguments. You can even use outside references too. So if the authors use the ACRL framework or refer to the ACRL framework, go out and refresh your memory on the ACRL framework. Go look and see, are the authors appropriately applying the ACR framework or whatever framework that they might be using? And use that as an outside reference for you. And you can be sure to cite those references that you use as well. So also if the author refers to a previous work, go take a look at the previous work. You don't have to read the previous work, but just go out and take a look at it. Maybe find another review on that work and see, okay, did the author actually bring in the previous work that they're referencing appropriately? And you can use that too. Just be sure to cite that particular work as well. So it's a brief summary, but it's not a itemized chapter by chapter reiteration of what the book is. It is the highlight. It's what you found is most important of what the authors or the editors covered. It's the unifying theme of the book. It's also was the author successful? Did the authors cover their thesis? Did the authors provide a logical order for their content? And also, if there are appendices in the back, supporting work, perhaps their own references, how well did their appendices support what they've authored in the book? Did if it's a workbook, did they offer example, I don't know, quizzes or other frameworks that you might use or workbooks that you can use in your own job? Did they share that content? So be sure to add that in your assessment or your analysis of the particular work. Are there any
Melissa. Oh, yeah.
questions?
Someone asked in the chat, how does it change things if we feel that what we are reviewing was written by AI?
That is absolutely an interesting question because AI throws a wrench in a lot of things. You might mention it. Well, you know what? Not even might. I would definitely mention it. Most I will at least as editor, as peer reviewer for other journals with my editorial work with ACRL and C&RL specifically, we require our authors to disclose whether AI was used or not. And in a lot of instances, we don't allow our authors to use AI. We want our authors to be live. Um, we want them to, especially for peer-reviewed articles, we can't hold AI responsible for what it produces. So be sure to include that in your review. If you get a feeling that, this is AI created, um, be sure to add that in there. Or you might stop your review and reach out to, if you are reviewing for a journal or for another publication, reach out to the editors and talk to them and say, hey, I think this particular book was AI generated. What do I do? Because a lot of times journals will then, the editors will tell you or give you guidance of what you should do, whether you should stop your review at that point, find another book, or whether you continue your review and make a note of it. Does that answer the question?
We did have a couple of other comments sort of related to that question. So someone said that they use AI to critique their review before submitting it. And then someone else said that it would be insulting if you were wrong about the person using AI to write their book.
Okay, so remind me if I forget. So, is it insulting? Yes, that's why in some ways don't reach out to the author. The primary the primary or your initial probably go to would be go back to the journal editor and see what you should do and seek guidance from there. A lot of times the authors have reached out to the journal, or the journal may have contact with the publisher and they can take care of it from their end. So probably your go-to is to go back to the journal editors to see what you should do. The answer to I guess in part the question is it okay to submit what you're writing, to your review to through AI to, I guess, as a proofreader? Is that kind of how I'm reading that inquiry or that question, that you would use AI to proofread your book review?
They said no to critique it.
Oh, to critique your own review?
I believe so.
Um, I would probably say no. Again, this is your opinion. Um, AI isn't really, sh- I would say AI doesn't, is a computerized may offer a computerized opinion, but again, it's not good. You can't hold AI responsible for its assessment. We can only, I guess, be responsible for what we say. It's our opinion. Does that answer?
Uh,
Any, go
there's
ahead.
another question from the same person. Is it appropriate to look at how others have reviewed the book?
Yes, I actually, I will tell you, when I do a book review, I do look at other reviews. That does not sway me on my opinion. I don't let that sway my opinion. But I do look at other reviews because if I find that, hey, this is a great book, I like to, I do go out and take a look and say, to see, hey, what are other people saying about the book? Likewise, if I find the book weak in some areas or maybe the writing isn't that good, I like to go see what other people are saying. Because is it just me? Or are other people finding it maybe the book is difficult to understand, or maybe the content didn't cover what you expected. So sometimes it is nice to go see what other people are saying, but I absolutely will still write my own opinion. And I also, eh, eh, in my book reviewing experience, I've actually reviewed for an outlet, an online outlet that people have gotten, it was a volunteer re review outlet, but people have gotten let go even from those volunteer reviewing positions because they've actually plagiarized other people's reviews. So those people, that person I don't know, was reviewing and they were let go because they were plagiarizing somebody else's review. So be careful when you do that. I'm not saying anybody would do that, but sometimes it is easier to incorporate somebody else's analysis into your own without even realizing it as well. Um, but yes, I would absolutely say that it's okay to look at other reviews. Any other
Uh,
questions?
yes. So we have two more questions.
Sure.
So if there are a lot of other reviews on a book, would it be better to write a review, I think, about a book that hasn't been reviewed yet?
Yeah, I could say yes and no because you're likely reviewing it. So, for example, for CNRL, we review or provide book reviews for essentially one book. So if I have I'm sitting here looking at reviewing a book on paranormal Kentucky. For CNRL, I am only going to provide one review on paranormal Kentucky. It could be that George is only going to see this review in CNRL, even though Paranormal Kentucky may have been reviewed in other journals on Amazon and other places. Authors like authors and publishers like to have their books reviewed. So the more people who review it, the more places that reviews appear, the better for them. So it's not necessarily better to choose a book that doesn't have any reviews or only has 4 or 5 reviews.
And then the other question was, is it appropriate to comment on the author's credentials?
Ugh, that's going to make me think. Um, Only in the sense that they are potentially qualified to cover the particular subject of the book. So if I am I am a collection management librarian, and let's say I'm the editor of a particular book collection about collection development strategies, then absolutely, please say Melissa has X number of years as collection development. If I am a reference and instruction a librarian and I have an edited book on collection development, um, do some research if you can. Hopefully, as the author, I will somewhere in my author statement or the publisher promotion, I will have said something about my collection development background, even though I may not be a collection management librarian. If I don't have any um, experience, you might say in your um, perhaps in your conclusion, and we'll get there, in your conclusion, you might say, you know, book was helpful, might have given, good strategies for collecting for fiction, mystery fiction, but the author um, doesn't make it clear maybe that's even too strong. Maybe you don't even make a statement on the author's credentials, or you just say sometimes the absence speaks louder than saying they don't have it or whether you question it or not. I don't know if that answers.
So there's a follow-up question. What about commenting on the price of the book or the reputation of the publisher?
I hate to say on the pricing of the book. You could say, I'll give an example. If you're reviewing a book, let's say it does cost $200. It might be appropriate to say, this might be a good book for a collection development curriculum. However, the book may be a bit pricey um, for students. You could say that, but a lot of times authors don't have they don't have any say in the pricing of the book. Um, and part of it too is that in some ways it may or may not be too expensive for somebody else. So you hate to make that judgment call. Usually in a book review, especially in my headers for CNRL, it includes kind of the brief citation, well, the citation, the author, editors, title, but I also include the price of the book as well. And that price may be different across different vendors as well. It could be different on Amazon than from what's being sold from Cambridge publishers versus finding it as a used book. So sometimes pricing, you may want to leave that out. As far as the reputation of the publisher, I, I hesitate because um that's not necessarily under the purview of the book. It's the book under review and not necessarily the publisher. Other questions?
Is it appropriate to review a book if you know the author personally?
I would recommend not reviewing the book if you know the author personally. If you know them and you still want to review them, please make sure that your editor knows that you know the author personally. Ask the editor if that's okay, because some journals may say, no, not okay. Some journals may say, yes, that's okay. Can you provide an objective review? And please disclose that you know the author personally. But I do not recommend it. So let me go to the third portion or the third section of a book review, and that's your conclusion. So you have your introduction that places the um, content gives introduces the author. It kind of places the book in its relevancy. Um, you have your actual critique and review, but now you're going to offer your conclusions. Okay. Now, again, the length of your review, how many paragraphs you write, how many sentences, how many words, whatever the requirements, will be driven by the journal and how much real estate space you're given for your review. So your conclusions will be your relevancy. You might speak to the timeliness of the book, the applicability to readers, the importance to the field. You might even add a brief, reviewer's personal experience, perhaps how the book might be useful to your work, or how you've applied it, or how it might be applied to your situation. But I do say reviewers' personal experience, keep that very limited if you do, because again, you want this to be more applicable to everybody, versus just maybe your own situation. And I'll speak to this in a minute, that you'll want to, as best as you can, avoid the first person. You're also going to give your recommendations here. Who might be interested? Um, Collection development person, manager might be interested. Your reference desk staff members might be interested, or upper level management. This would fit for management, um, for their day-to-day work. So who would benefit? It's also nice to include what library or what kind of institution should carry it. Does this book fit in the public library? Does it fit in perhaps a special collection, or if a museum has a library, or does it belong in an academic library? Would this be great for an academic curriculum? Um, so include those in your recommendations. And be sure to wrap up your review, even if it's a sentence. And maybe your recommendation of where it belongs is your conclusion, and that's fine. But you might even suggest further research. Maybe it's something that the authors were very successful in covering the topic. But maybe you might even recommend, hey, but you know what? This this might spur other considerations. And any final words of wisdom, and just close your review. So again, it's kind of like well, not even kind of. It is exactly like a formal research paper. You have your introduction, you have the meat of your paper, and then you have your conclusion. So treat your book review as a formal paper in a sense. It may not be peer reviewed, but you're still following basic writing rules and principles. And you may not cover each and every bullet point. Some of these things may not be applicable to the particular book, or you may not have space to address all of these things. But these are ideas of what you could include, and you may have other things that you want to add. Any comments or questions about when you're writing your conclusions? Okay, so of just particular note, other things, outside of the content of a book review, just some additional tips. Again, remember, it's not an itemized summary of every single chapter or of every single thing that the author covers. It's a highlight. It's what you want your readers, if they're reading your book review, it's what you want your readers to take away from the particular book. It's the primary keys or the principle of the book. Try to avoid, and I do, avoid first person as well. It's more authoritative if it's in the third person. Keep quotes to a minimum. I have seen papers, not just book reviews, but other peer-reviewed papers, research papers that it's just riddled with quotes. So keep your quotes to a minimum. Maybe one or two quotes that really speak to the particular point that you're making or to the particular point that the author is making. Absolutely, it's okay to use outside references when it's applicable, and then be sure to use citations. I do include every now and then, I do get a book review for C&RL that does refer to outside works, and they do include citations. Also, if you do quotes within from the book, be sure just to put the page number. Um, from the book that you're reviewing so people know where it came from as well. And follow paper writing guiding principles, your thesis, um, your your main point of the paper, your conclusions. Also follow the requirements of the journal as well. So reach out to your editor, to the journal editor, for any questions about requirements of the journal. Usually editors will tell you up front, I need, 1,000 words. It needs to be in APA. It needs to be in MLA citation format. Um, they will also tell you deadlines as well. And adjust your review based on real estate. And by real estate, I mean, is it just a quick 2 paragraph review? Is it a 2,000 word review? Or is it a 3 to 5 page review? And remember, this is your analysis. You choose what you found was important, what your takeaway is, what you want to share with people reading your review. What did you find important? What what did you see as the author's main point, and how successful were the authors or was the book in conveying that thesis or their main purpose for writing the book? So we have about 15 more minutes. I wanted to give you some examples of some good introduction, some good writing in here. This is from a 2025 review for closing a college library. And just quickly, I hate reading what's on the screen because you can read it, but I just quickly, this is a nice introduction. And I've only taken snippets from the entire paragraph. But the person wrote, for most, permanently closing and dismantling a library is inconceivable. Libraries are seemingly timeless institutions. As the growing number of defunct colleges and universities over the past decades demonstrates, however, library closures are now a viable concern of the profession. Closing a college library, which is the title of the book, that's being reviewed provides a timely resource for those impacted by this unfortunate emerging trend. This is a great introduction because it actually provides context of the book. It says why it's timely. It says why it might be interesting to readers. So this is a great introduction and a lead in to the particular book. Here's an example of a nice solid analysis. And again, this is just a snippet. The book Opening Ceremony is organized in a thoughtful manner. The author introduces the topic and uses several examples from universities entrenched in the issue of governance debates. The author of the book argues institutional values intrinsically link with their efforts toward shared governance. Discussions about the history and theory of governance help clarify why it's an essential topic for debate. No discussion of faculty governance is complete without Robert's Rules of Order, which is undoubtedly a foundational piece of governance. So this is a nice analysis, and look how the author, Dr. Jordan, brought in Robert's Rules of Order. So ceremony is about faculty governance, and and Dr. Jordan also refers to Robert's Rules of Order. So this is a great example of how you might also bring an outside reference in to your particular book review. And finally, here's just a nice conclusion. The book Writing Science in Plain English, second edition, is a good addition to the collection of any scientific writer wanting to add clarity to their written word or to increase reviewers' comprehension of their ideas. Additionally, the book is an excellent choice for anyone teaching a science writing course at the undergraduate or graduate level. The author of the book masters the context of clear and effective writing strategies for science. So here's a nice conclusion. It 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 wraps up the book. It tells this might be good for personal use. It might be good for course curriculum. So it's a nice conclusion. It's clear and it's concise. So we have about 10 more minutes. I want to wrap up and say, again, what makes a good book review? And like any good writing, it has an introduction. It has that middle part, which will be your assessment and your evaluation. And it has a conclusion. And it is a nice analysis of the book, of what you found important, what you want other readers to know about that book, whether they should pick it up for their library or for their collection or for their own professional development. So I want to thank you today. I want to again thank you to ACRL for hosting me for the book review presentation. Are there other questions? Are there other comments? I I always learn from everybody else too. So are there other recommendations that you have for writing book reviews or what you've found helpful when you've read other reviews?
We have another question. So, do you have any advice for those of us reviewing books that might not align perfectly with our own research interests or areas of expertise? How can we ensure to the best of our ability that we're appropriately contextualizing a work's significance?
So I would answer that as if you like to read and you can provide a critical analysis, keep this in mind that a lot of your readers as a book or a lot of readers who read book reviews aren't necessarily experts either. And you can speak to that perhaps even in your review in a more of a roundabout way on how useful you found it as perhaps a novice of the subject, um, or as being perhaps a newcomer to the to a particular topic as well. So you can actually mention that as a reviewer, because at times I do appreciate when a reviewer may not be an expert in library teaching pedagogy. Um, it brings a fresh look to that particular book. Does that answer the question?
Yes.
What else can I answer? I'm going to stop sharing my screen real quick so you can see me. Any other questions?
As a book review editor, what are the major problems you have observed that you have not already addressed?
Um, Please, please keep in touch with the editors of the journal, your book review editor. Um, there are times I know, um, as a reviewer, I always appreciate people who volunteer to review. You're usually fitting it in with your job. If you're a librarian, you're doing collection development, you are doing programming, you're teaching. You've got administrative responsibilities. You've got all of those other duties as assigned. If you're if you're running behind, for me, editors are perfectly flexible. Even if you say, "Hey, my book review was due November 12th. I'm not going to have it for another 2 weeks. I've had this come up." Just let them know. So your editor knows that you haven't forgotten them. So please just stay in touch with your editor. And if you have questions about, "Hey, I'm not sure how to treat this," um, reach out to your editor. I think that's the biggest thing that I have found. It's kind of like students being reluctant to reach out to their professors. Editors are people too. So while we have deadlines as well, but we can manage our deadlines if we know where you are in your process. What else can I answer? What other advice might you have?
How does one become a reviewer for your publication?
Reach out to me. Please, I'm always excited to get new book reviewers. Um, Let me go back to really quickly. I will share this last page really quick of my um, presentation. Let me get there really quickly. Whoops. There's my email address. Please, it's melissa.lockaby@ung.edu. Please reach out to me. I am always, always looking for book reviewers. And that being said, CNRL, if you are interested in other volunteer opportunities, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. I may not be the right person, but I will get you to the right person as well. Like if you want to be a peer reviewer as well. So please reach out. And if you are interested in being a book review editor, um, be a book reviewer, start reviewing books. I know that CNRL, when um, I, I applied when they put a call out for applications to be a book review editor. Um, and I had been a book review editor for a regional journal. So my book review writing helped me with being a book review editor. Um, so please reach out to me. Anything else? And if you have questions, even if you're not writing for CNRL, if you have questions about book reviewing, I'm here. Please contact me. I don't mind questions. I like meeting new people. Anything else?
I'm not seeing any other questions, but there are thanks to you for hosting the presentation.
So thank you everybody for joining today. I appreciate your time. Again, Lois will be sharing the recording and the presentation with everybody following, probably within a couple of days, most likely. And please reach out to me if you have any questions whatsoever about the presentation or if you want to be a book reviewer. I would love to have you. So with that being said, I will give back everybody the next 5 minutes of the hour. And again, thank you very much for joining me today.